So first of all, a bit about the BFA. We were established back in 1977, basically by a small group of franchisors who got together because they wanted to differentiate themselves. We're a subscription-funded, not-for-profit trade association, and we're run by our members for our members. By that, we have a board of directors and a number of functional committees that are all looking at the work of the association on a regular basis. We are a voluntary body with 270 franchise businesses in membership. These are businesses that have put themselves up against a strict criteria and been through our rigorous accreditation process in order to belong to the BFA. And we do a lot to inform the public on what good franchising is through programmes such as this. So, what is franchising? Well, it's not the Harry Potter film franchise or Virgin Trains. What we do is business format franchising, which is a simple relationship between two parties, the franchisor, who owns the brand and business system, and franchisees, which are individuals such as yourself looking to run a copy of that business in their local area. There are 4 common elements to a franchise: the brand, which is going to be both owned and protected by the franchisor, the system that will be both proven and transferable, the support that you're going to get, not just at the start to get you up and running, but throughout the term of the franchise, and then the franchise agreement that's going to wrap the whole thing up that will be both comprehensive and fair. Now, to break each of those down in a little bit more detail, I'm going to start with the brand. First and foremost, you want to make sure that the franchisor has registered their trade and service mark. It's important they do this because owning the brand means that the franchisor can take action against people who set up using the brand without paying. For example, if someone's setting up calling themselves McDougall's using the Golden Arches, you want to know that your franchisor can do something about that. But you also want to know that they can take action against insiders. If I'm a burger franchisee and I'm selling rancid cat meat at the back door instead of the prime Angus burgers that the franchisor has set out, and somebody dies, that's not just going to damage the brand, it's going to make national and possibly even international news. So you want to know that the franchisor has a process in place to deal with people that break the rules. For example, midnight audit teams that can go in and check that what you're selling isn't rancid cat meat. But you also want to know that your franchisor has a mechanism in place to deal with good ideas. After all, it was a franchisee that invented the Big Mac. Now, the reason you're looking to buy a franchise is because the business has been proven. The franchisor has already made the expensive mistakes, so you don't have to. You'll want to see evidence that the business works and is going to deliver a profit to you. And you're going to be able to see this in 2 ways, either by looking at the pilot operation that the franchisor has set up, or by talking to existing franchisees if the business is already established. Now, franchisors can't franchise an idea. We get lots of people when we do things like exhibitions coming along and saying, "Oh, I've got a great idea and I'm looking to franchise it." So what you want to see is that they've actually gone out and piloted what they're looking to franchise to you. As a franchisee, you also want to make sure that there are fully documented systems in place. Our lawyer is going to talk much more about it later, but there's going to be a detailed operations manual that's going to set out the sales, marketing, finance, HR, and the day-to-day operations of that business. But there's also going to be a detailed training course for you that's going to teach you how to do that business, ordinarily in somewhere like 2 to 6 weeks. The initial training you're going to get is going to depend on the complexity of the business you're looking to run. A simple operation will require less operational training than a business that has a more complex operating procedure. A franchisee putting up and taking down for sale and to let boards is only going to need maybe 2 days training to learn how to climb a ladder and hit a board with a hammer, whereas say a plumber or a printing specialist is going to need more intensive support there. Now, your initial training will cover some of the things outlined in the slide. Business planning, you own the plan and the franchisor might provide you with a template and guidance, but it's got to be something that you really understand. Site selection, fit out. Location is key when it comes to premises, so you want to see some support from the franchisor at this stage. Admin setup, is there a call centre? And staff training, is the franchisor going to train your staff, or have you got to do that yourself? And then there's going to be the launch to get you up and running in the local area. A good question to ask any franchisor is who's going to deliver the training? Where's it going to be? How many people are going to be involved? It's not really going to be an intensive training course if there's 50 other people on a course with you. And continuing support. If you don't get ongoing support, it isn't a business format franchise. The franchisor should be offering on-site support, head office training, things like forums, conferences, events that you can attend to share know-how and best practice with other franchisees. They'll always be on the end of the phone. And the levels of support that you're going to get from the franchisor will depend on the ongoing fee that you're going to pay. And I will come back to that a little bit later on. Now, the franchise agreement, you'll be really pleased to note that we have a solicitor to take you through this in a lot more detail. So I just wanted to cover some of the basics. The agreement will cover things like term and renewal. Ordinarily, a franchise agreement will be 5 years with an automatic right to renew at the end of that if you've been a good franchisee. It will outline your territory, what that looks like, and most agreements will now contain things like minimum performance clauses. It's going to cover what happens if you get into dispute with your franchisor and what the termination restrictions are. For example, you won't be able to do that business in the same area for up to a year after if the franchisor terminates you. It's going to cover what happens when you want to sell the business on. The franchisor is going to want to approve the incoming buyer, make sure that they meet the criteria in the same way that you did when you start. And all franchisees should be on the same terms. I can't highlight that enough. A franchisor shouldn't be negotiating on a franchise agreement. And if there's one key piece of advice I can give you, it's take the right advice. I don't say this to promote all of our solicitor colleagues, but they really do understand business format franchising, and you'll be wasting your money to take it to someone that doesn't. Okay, so now coming back to the price of a franchise. Now, the initial fee. A franchisor shouldn't be making money out of the initial fee that they charge. So don't be afraid to ask them to break it down for you. What am I getting for my money? Here's some of the things that should be included. So your recruitment cost. On average, according to a survey we do every year, it's around about £5,000 to recruit each franchisee. There's going to be the license to use the brand. The bigger the brand name you're investing in, the more expensive that's going to be. The initial training. If the franchisor is hiring in external presenters and they've got to book venues, that comes at a cost. The initial setup, finding premises, again, people going out in the field and looking for the right place for you costs money. It will also cover any equipment you need and the cost of your initial marketing launch. So moving on to ongoing fees. Franchising is a mutual partnership, a little bit like a marriage. The franchisor is successful if you're successful, so it's in their interest to make this relationship work. Now, fees are normally structured as a percentage of your turnover, ordinarily called a management service fee or sometimes a royalty. You may also see fixed fee businesses. Generally, these are more for cash-based businesses, but again, it's about making sure that the franchisor is committed to your ongoing success if they're paid anyway. The final way of looking at ongoing fees is a markup on product. A great example of that is a pet food business. For example, the franchisor manufactures the pet food at their head office. They sell it on to you at a markup, you sell it on to the end user at a markup. It's also very common for franchisors to charge a small percentage as a marketing fee. It should be completely transparent to the network. It's called a national marketing fund or a national promotional fund, and it's used for big campaigns to promote the network as a whole. This isn't money that the franchisor spends to get new franchisees, it's to raise the awareness. So, for example, Domino's have sponsored the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent with their funds before. Now, your ongoing fee will include things like this. So, brand quality, product and service development. The franchisor is going to be constantly keeping you ahead of competition. There'll be the consultancy support that you're paying for with the field visits and mentors that come out and spend time with you. Compliance. The franchisor needs to make sure they're keeping you ahead and that there are no legal changes. And they're going to be consistently financially monitoring you. So please do expect that a franchisor will want to see your monthly figures. It's great because they'll be able to highlight where you're particularly struggling. If you're selling and not doing enough debt collection, that's something that the franchisor will be able to come back to you and highlight. Now, the benefits of franchising. It is a proven business system with access to network coverage and buying power. The more franchisees there are, the cheaper the products will be if you're buying in bulk. And once there's UK coverage, the franchisor might be able to negotiate national contracts. For example, if you're a cleaning company, the franchisor might be able to negotiate cleaning all of the premises, for example, Marks and Spencer's. The franchisor there will be there to support you and keep you ahead of the competition, as I've just said. And a great one is that banks heavily support franchising in the UK. Lloyds Bank are going to talk more later about what they lend, but most banks will lend up to 70% of the total initial investment you need. And finally, franchising isn't just about buying a job. You can build a strong business which you can sell on. There are also downsides to franchising, but not many. You do have to pay for it. That cheque is going to get harder and harder to write every month as you become more successful because the amount's going to get bigger. But you do need to remember at that stage all of the support that the franchisor gave you in the early days. You have to comply with network standards, and you could be exposed to other franchisees' mistakes. There are territory restrictions, and you do have to get up every day and do the business. Franchising isn't a license to print money. At the end of the day, there's no avoiding hard work. You have to build that business up from scratch. And as a franchisor once said to me, the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. Does franchising work? Yes, it does. Here are some of the stats from our latest survey. The figure here that consistently stands out for me is year on year, the forced failure rate in franchising is less than 5%, which in comparison to non-franchise startup business is fantastic.